Kia ora and welcome to today's information session titled Community Wellness and Housing. A really big thank you to the Te Aka Māori team for the facility, and I'd just like to welcome, my name is Fisher Wang. I'm one of the councillors at Rotorua Lakes Council, and I'd just like to welcome my colleague, Councillor Sandra Kaifong in the back there as well. At last week's information session, titled Housing for All, we took a look at what housing in Rotorua could look like as we move to meet growth demands in our city. We looked at how to encourage and enable good design and what makes a good development. We had Marcus Jacobson from Watchman Capital, a New Zealand company specialising in residential property development, and Marcus talked us through current trends in housing typology and explored what medium density housing in Rotorua could look like. We then had Joanna Smith, a principal urban designer from Kāinga Ora, who talked us through how Kāinga Ora encourages and enables good design in both public housing and with building partners in their large-scale projects. This session provided a great visualisation of the different housing typologies, how these developments as a whole look and how they feel in different ownership models fit together when creating a community. These information sessions are really aimed at improving community understanding and engagement, and it has been really great to see you all here. These sessions are also being videoed, and these videos are being put up on our website following each of the sessions for you to view. Now, today's agenda. Today's session, we will cover the current the current supply and the types of housing in Rotorua, and you'll hear from a representative from the Tatau Pounamu Collective, who is working collaboratively to develop and deliver a community-led vision and approach to improving local neighbourhoods and the well-being of local residents through housing. First up, we will have Rotorua Lakes Council's Rosemary Viskovic, providing an overview of the housing continuum. We will then have Paraone Pirika from the Tatau Pounamu Collective talking us through the Eastside Community Wellness Plan. I would like to now invite Rosemary up to share her presentation.
Kia ora koutou koutoa. Ko Rosemary Viskovic taku ingoa. I'm Rosemary Viskovic. I'm Director of Thriving Communities, part of the Community Wellbeing Group at Council. I've been involved in the housing strategy at Council for the last several years. So I'm here to talk to you a bit about the housing continuum and how that relates to the housing strategy. The diagram up here kind of represents a one-page view of the housing strategy and the different parts of that, and across the top is the continuum of housing, which is really the model we've used to kind of explain that there are different ways in which people purchase, afford and have their housing. We've had quite an urgent focus on the left-hand side of the diagram with partner agencies like Kāinga Ora, Housing and Urban Development, MSD, around people in urgent housing need. But while we're trying to address that urgently, it's really just temporary fixes, and what we really need is the right-hand side of the diagram, which is all the infrastructure investment, the development of permanent homes with iwi, with private providers, with Kāinga Ora developing the increase in public supply. So there's kind of two sides to this diagram. One is a temporary fix, which is not ideal, but it's a basic human need for shelter. The other side is developing our community to the stage that it's a really thriving community where everyone belongs and where the range of houses across that continuum meet our population's needs. It's just a quick reminder for anyone who's not intimately familiar with this, but just what people told us about the values of housing, what a home provides. That it's more about just increasing housing supply. It's about homes that are parts of communities, the quality livable communities. So home is a place of safety, a place of privacy, to sleep, eat, recreate, rest, connect and belong. And it's a housing the basic need, but it's one that's become increasingly unaffordable for many. So the housing continuum itself. Now this is just a diagram to represent things. It's not the every single way of having a home, but it helps to explain some of the ways. It refers to different ways people can pay for their homes. is not necessarily linear. Okay, so it's not necessarily saying that somebody who starts in emergency housing will eventually necessarily own their own home. And for instance, somebody who's an older person on a fixed income, if they're already in public housing, it's really unlikely that their finances would change such that they would then end up owning their own home. But we also see young families and young people starting out who may start out in the market rental space or sharing with family and eventually work their way as they increase their income over time, which was natural as they get more experience and become more qualified. And eventually, it's a bit of a Kiwi dream that you pay off your mortgage when you retire. There is, however, an increasing trend of a population who are renting much more long-term and who are not buying homes. That's a New Zealand-wide trend, but it's also happening in Rotorua. And because Rotorua has significant levels of socio-economic disadvantage, we do have need right across that continuum for different ways in which people can afford a home. This little iron triangle is really just this critical thing of the challenge between increasing demand because we have population growth, not enough supply because for a long time we didn't have population growth and it takes a while to leverage up and for the market to respond and increase supply to meet demand. And the affordability issue is that when you have constrained supply, the price goes up. And for people on limited incomes or lower incomes, it makes it really hard to afford a home. It also puts pressure on the need for public housing in Rotorua. And this other little diagram, I won't try and explain it too much, but it's basically just showing that we've got a mismatch in the community between our community's incomes and the cost of housing. So the number of people in low income bands has remained much the same. And back in 2013, probably 30% of properties would have been affordable for renting households, earning 50k per annum. However, in 2020, the same renters, there's only 8% of the property market they could afford. So this is this increasing mismatch that we've seen. There aren't enough homes for people on lower incomes, and the price has gone up, particularly at that bottom end of the market, and because of the limited supply. And I guess this is where some of the need for emergency housing has come in the continuum. And again, this is not a desired part of the continuum. And ideally, emergency housing is intended to offer a safe short-term option where someone's without accommodation. And there are different households with different needs. So, for instance, a family with children has a different need for accommodation from a young single person. And the idea is that emergency housing needs to be something better than people staying in cars or tents or sleeping rough in our parks. It's also preferable to night shelters. Night shelters are generally associated with single men, so they may be suitable for some cohorts, but not for a family with children. The rapid increase for demand in emergency housing, again, relates to that proportion of households that are low incomes, increase in population and slow market response to get affordable housing. You'll also hear the term transitional housing used. Transitional housing is kind of a term about a way housing is funded by the state, but it refers to temporary housing that's meant to bridge the gap between emergency and a permanent home. But we've also got quite a low rate of those. It's growing, but we don't have as many of those as we'd like either. So public or social housing or community housing, there's different terms for it. This is housing which has a long history in New Zealand, with generations of families benefiting from homes and communities built by the state, which was to ensure affordable supply, especially post-war, post-depression, those kinds of times. There's been big increases in communities all around New Zealand, and it's served a real purpose. Over time, the state has sold those homes to families, and there's been an affordable way for some families to own their own home, and there's some learnings from that as well. Considering that Rotorua has a higher proportion of low-income and benefit-dependent households than nationally, unfortunately we also have a low proportion of public homes. So whereas on average 4% of the housing stock in New Zealand is public housing, in Rotorua it's only about 2%. So Kāinga Ora is working to grow that to meet needs. Pictured here are just some of the most recent public homes built. On the right, these are some homes opened in Fordlands on Malwhai Road about a year ago, I think, and they're family-size homes, and you can see safely fenced-off driveways and things like that. They're brand new, nobody had moved in at that stage. And on the left is some homes that were opened in May Road just this week by Kaingaora, and that's just a picture of the children from St Michael's who came to welcome the new people and to sing a waiata for them and to plant some lemon trees to welcome them. The other types of homes you might associate with public homes are where you have community housing providers, and there's a small number of those in Rotorua. Community housing providers have to jump through some hoops with housing and urban development to be recognised and have the skills to run public housing, and they can then access a thing called the income related rent subsidy, which helps to make sure that when they have tenants off the public register, they can offer a really affordable rent. And there's groups like Habitat for Humanity and others who are involved in doing that kind of thing. I was going to say, during our public consultation on the strategy, people talked to us about they didn't want any more ghettos or gated communities. They said they wanted mixed housing, they wanted mixed communities, not all the state houses in one suburb together. I think though that sometimes people, when they see change actually happening in their backyards, that can be quite challenging to their thinking. And I think we're seeing a bit of that in the paper and people talking about that at the moment. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that very strong message during that consultation originally was we want mixed housing. So sub-market rentals. So council housing is kind of an example of sub-market rentals in the continuum. We've got 152 units spread across 5 different sites across Rotorua. They're almost all single bedroom with some bedsit style. The rent's kept at a cost recovery only, and the tenants can access the accommodation supplement. Councils aren't allowed to be a community housing provider, so we can't access the same subsidies as a community housing provider. Most people stay in these units for many years, many years, and it's their home and they stay there until they have a different need. Other examples of sub-market housing might be some kaumātua housing provided by hapu and iwi, but we are also really concerned there are increasing numbers of people getting to retirement age who don't own a home, who are going to still be in the market trying to rent, and on a fixed income, that's going to be a problem. So we know there is a need for affordable housing for people who are ageing and again wanting to keep them in their communities. Market rentals. Okay, so as I said, lots more people are renting than used to, and as a long-term option, being what's affordable, or actually as a preference because they may not be settled in a particular place. Tenants are protected by law in New Zealand, including rules about agreements, bonds, managing disputes, healthy home standards. But New Zealand is not as strong as some countries which have a much longer history of people in long-term rentals where there are actually much greater protections for people. This is looking at market rentals, and it's from a site called .loves Data that Council uses, which has some quite good information down to suburb level. And it's talking about rental affordability. And I think I said to you before, the cost of renting has been going up. What this diagram represents, the grey line is the national average that people are spending who are renting in the private market as a percentage of their annual income. So, that looks like it's, back in 2014, it was up about 32% of people's income was on rent, came down a bit, it's heading up. But you'll see the yellow line is Rotorua, and we've followed that trend, except we're heading up at a much higher rate. So, and again, this is about supply and demand, that the prices are able to be asked to be a lot higher because there's demand for the product. In April, May of this year, on average, 32% of private rentals are spending people in private rentals are spending 32% of their annual income on rent. Rent in public homes, just to note, are kept pitched at 25%. That makes them affordable. And some examples of some specific suburbs, because you can see a bit of a difference here. So for instance, in Western Heights, where there's 28% of homes are owned by the homeowner owned, 45% of income is spent on rent. So that's a significant part of people's income. In Nakuru, which is a rural suburb, 44% of the homes are home owned, but of people renting, they're spending 11% of their income on rent. Okay, so it's quite a different view. Where else have I got? In Takotu, 39% on rent. So it varies a bit by suburb and so on, and it's obviously very much dependent on, in relation to people's income, as to how much it costs to rent. So it just gives you a bit of an idea. There is quite a variation across Rotorua. And when we look at home ownership, now this is reducing nationwide, but in Rotorua it's not reducing at quite a steeper rate as nationally, and that may be because actually our homes are cheaper to buy than in some other places, particularly places like Auckland, Wellington, and so on. So home ownership in Rotorua, 43% of homes are owned by people who live in them. And it's reduced by 13% between the last two censuses. Home ownership rates are highest in Hamarana, Springfield, Nongatawa West and Pukehangi, and lowest in Rotorua Central, Mangakakahi Central, Victoria and Kuero. I think going forward that one of the issues is around affordability and different models for how people will be able to afford their homes. So there's a number of things which are relatively new, I guess, for New Zealand and Rotorua at the moment, but there's definitely some opportunities and things for people to watch out for. So government through Kāinga Ora and also working with iwi and community trusts are all working at ways to make ownership more affordable. Some of the products from Kāinga Ora include progressive home ownership, which is helping families into their first homes, and it helps with deposits or mortgage servicing. There's, for instance, Habitat for Humanity offers a rent to buy scheme over 25 years. There's also first home grants and loans. You may be familiar with that when people are first getting their home. If it fits certain criteria, there's other support they can get. There's Kiwi Build, which works in two key ways. One is helping with developers to expedite residential development and increase the pace of that coming to market. And the other is improving the access and providing greater options for home ownership at affordable prices. Build to rent is a term that's used for medium to large scale residential housing developments, and they're built to provide long-term rental accommodation. So it's really for a model for investors to look at how they might be increasing the rental market availability in a community. We've also got examples of community things like the Housing Foundation. So the Housing Foundation has a shared ownership program, a rent-to-own program, and there's also a group called Kiwi Buy New Zealand, which comprises Salvation Army, Habitat for Humanity, Housing Foundation, Community Housing Aotearoa and the Queenstown Community Housing Trust, and they have shared and progressive home ownership models, and I think these are things that we can learn from and see if we can get people in our groups in our community and iwi seeing if there are some ideas from these that we could be using to help with affordability. So in conclusion, the housing continuum, it's just a model to try and explain those different ways. Our community in New Zealand is changing as to how people have homes, but fundamentally we want people to have homes to be part of communities. It takes a long time to develop homes, much longer than we'd like, but the houses are going to be there and lived in by many people for many years. So it's really important to get them right and to be thinking about how they are healthy and enable people's well-being and to live good lives. This photo here is actually just of the Mount View development in Takotu. Probably it might be a year old now, but that included Kiwi Build and some other kinds of models for home ownership. So it's quite an example of, again, developments can meet different parts of the continuum for the different kinds of needs in our community. It's not one size fits all, and I guess there's lots of changes and opportunities coming, so watch the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you all for those questions there. Rosemary will be here at the end as well, and we'll have a question and answer session and after the session as well. Both Rosemary and Paraone will be here to answer some questions. I do feel like I think some of the questions might be directed better towards at last week's session towards Kāinga Ora, who might be better able to answer some of those questions there. But now I'd like to invite Paraone from the Tatau Pounamu Collective to talk about the Eastside Community Wellness Plan. Paraone, thank you.
Oh, kia ora tatakata. Ani rā te whakawhiu āki ngami ati kia koutou e whakatautau mai i rungi tēnei āhuatanga. Te kōrero, me pewhiatanga mua ma te āpōpō ma te ātahira. So, g'day, hello. And interesting how it first started off with the kāinga ora, housing. And so what am I here for? So I'm from Ngāti Tororo-Tarangi. If some of you don't know where that is, that's in Ōwhata. And I'm also Ngāti Unuku Kōpako, that's Rotakawa. And I'm also Ngāti Tūtenu, which is in Rangitaurere, Te Ngā area. I can also be in Ngāti Huringa at Ngāpuna and Ngāti Tarawhai at Hinemihi in Ngāpuna too. So, wellness plan, that's what we're talking. Kāinga ora, that's interesting, eh? Kāinga ora, lovely name. You know what kāinga ora means? Does anybody know what kāinga ora means? What is it? What does it mean? Living house. Yeah, living well, eh? Living order, having mauri, and kairere te wairua. And just what I'm hearing, the mauri hasn't been settled yet, and the wairua isn't ready. And so that's some of the discussions we've been having with kāinga ora. You've got a kāinga ora name. Pērā ki wā ki a lot of the names that have been used in our tari, in our government departments, not living up to them. Not living up to them. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why, we 12 years ago, one of the ladies from the community at Mokoia Community Association came to see me. And what she wanted to see me was behaviour of our tamariki mokopuna. Kaiwā tata nei tā in our schools, in our parks, in our houses, in everything. So that was one of the reasons she came to see me. So me, being a iwi hapu person brought up in that world, wasn't trusting of government departments, wasn't trusting of community associations, because I always felt nobody was listening to our point of view, a Māori point of view. So, but this lady that came to see me, she was a bit of a bulldog, kept going at me. And so, okay, this looks like the real deal. How do we buy into this? So we started off a relationship, talking to each other, getting to know each other. And so here's this 12 years ago, and a lot of it was about behaviour. Behaviour of our people, of our tamariki, but the impacts of that behaviour and the influence of that behaviour. So one of the things we looked at was the influence of that behaviour. Who influenced it? Who influenced that behaviour? And when we look at it, it's the adults. It's adults. So everybody has an influence on our tamariki mokopuna. Even though we might little bloody rat bags and all that blooming stuff, but adults have an influence on that behaviour. So that's where we had to start. And one of the things to start with was to get communities to understand how we think a little bit, how Māori think. And hopefully we'd get somewhere with that. Can we flash up that Tatau, just a little bit of history, that Tatau Pounamu? So here's a couple of things that got us to there. Tieke, you know what a tieke is? A saddleback, yeah. Native bird. Native bird that had a lot of meaning to Māori in terms of being able to be a navigator. A lot of our waka that came, they were navigation birds. They are weather bird. And they are an indicator of problems if we're willing to listen to them. I think we've forgotten how to listen to them. So that's one of the reasons why they appear on here. Who knows what this is? Have a guess, somebody? A mouth guard. Cool. That was from one of our kids in terms of a rainbow. The rainbow. Who knows anything about the rainbow? How many colours in the rainbow? They don't have a bloody clue, do we? Because we don't bother to take the time. For Māori, this is uanuku. Uanuku I tarangi. Uanuku I tarangi. Uanuku I tarangi that has, again, the same type of things. When uanuku I tarangi appears, nobody fights. No wars. Why? Warning. Not a good time to be battling. Not a good time to be battling. Rainbows. Uanuku I tarangi. It's this fella, Uanuku I tarangi's father is called Uanuku. And that fella is the atua of warning. Tubato. Take care. So every time this appears, behave yourself. Behave yourself. Tatau Pounamu. Tatau Pounamu. Tatau is a doorway, an unseen doorway. Pounamu you know as a greenstone. Is that right? Pounamu you know as a greenstone. There's another word for that, Pounamu. Pounamu in the old Māori world was a safe place. A safe place. And it's an open door. Tatau is an open door to a safe place. So that's what we wanted to create out the Eastside. A safe place for our tamariki mokopuna I tatuatai. For our young people first and foremost. That's what we wanted to create it in. To do that, we had to take ourselves back to the environment. We had to take ourselves back to the environment. Start to listen again. Start to rongo again. Listen. Start to hear it. Because what we were seeing, our tamariki mokopuna, somebody's not listening, somebody's not hearing. So part of those impacts or part of those influences on a lot of things to do is housing. Housing is one. What are other things? Every time you put a house on there, you've got an infrastructure that goes in. And with that infrastructure comes a hell of a lot of stuff that you've got to get rid of. Where did you get rid of it? You got the toilet stuff. You got the runoffs on the road. You got all that sort of. Where do you get it? Where do you get rid of it? Where do you send it into? The Rotorua Lakes. Rotorua Lakes has been an indicator for Māori for a long time that things are not right. You know where Rotorua Lakes is? Our lake, eh? That's why we say Rotorua Nui Akahu Matamomoi, to remind ourselves that's our tupuna. That's our tupuna. So if I want to put a toilet into my tupuna, what the hell? What the hell? But that's why I'm saying our mistrust for government departments and so forth, central government and all that, because they did put a toilet into our kahu matamomoi. They did put a toilet. Didn't need to listen to us way back then. But now they need to listen to us. Or we got to make them listen to us in terms of that. No different to Kaingoa, our housing. Everything they did, but a house is going to come with paru. How do we help to clean it out before that paru gets into the Rotorua Nui Akahu Matamomoi or gets into our people? It's already there. For a lot of Māori, it's already there. The impoverishment, you all know what impoverishment, we call it pohara. Normally we used to pohara to mean bugger all money in the pocket. But pohara is also about this, thinking. And a lot of our pohara people are pohara in their thinking. And if you're pohara over here, you're going to be pohara in your spirit, in your wairua too. You're going to be pohara in your wairua. So this is what this was all about, taking our people back to this. Still struggling to take our people back to this, to get to understand this, and also to put our tamariki mokopuna at the front end of everything, be it housing, be it whatever, putting them at the front end of everything. Not seeing them as freaky, not seeing them as little bloody mischiefs is the thing, but seeing as we've done something wrong. We as adults have done something wrong. Because that's how they behave is what we have helped to influence. So, yeah, can you flash up the other one? So you're using, again, going back to Māori values, we're using the waka haurua. Back in when we navigated over here, double hull waka, double hull. When he sailed from Hawaii to Aotearoa, double hull waka. One hull, hunga. The hunga is you, people. The other hull is our taiao. That's our environment. They have to walk together. They have to run together. So that was one of the things. The other part, when you walk outside, I hope you can see all this, was creating some posts. Creating some posts. You know, you got the east, south, northwest, all these things. What are they blowing into us? One of them was, we'll take whakapapa. Whakapapa was key, because whakapapa was getting to know you and me. Getting to know our whakapapa. What story do I bring? What story do you bring? What story did the government department bring? What story does our local council bring? What story does these different people bring? Whakapapa. Whakapapa. My whakapapa through my bloodlines tell me I'm forever rooted in where I was brought up. So I was brought up in Ōwhara, never needing to go anywhere else. But this whakapapa, people, once you understand a little bit about yourself, then you can create panaungatanga. Create a relationship. Now, I heard a few relationships going over here today, this just a little while ago, but how's our relationship with Kaingoora? And I can hear it. Not too good. Not too good for some people. Why is that? Because you haven't created a whakapapa. They haven't created a whakapapa. Who hasn't created a whakapapa? Relationships are absolutely required. Absolutely required. And they have to be genuine, especially for Māori. For too long we have created a lot of relationships that just wasn't genuine. Just wasn't genuine. So we had to make sure they were genuine. Just like when Lee came to see me from the MCA, I had to check it out. Had to go through all this whakapapa stuff first. Check her out. Are you genuinely? Do you really want to make a difference? Do you want to really want to look through my eyes too? Genuine. You have to be genuine. You have to be real. Otherwise, I walk away. Otherwise, I walk away. The other one was wairuatanga. Wairuatanga, people don't think it has a spiritual value, but it is also your assessment tool. For Māori, it's an assessment tool. I will always check you out through your waira. The way you converse, the way you talk to me, the way you move, the way your eyes move, wairua will tell me just how, if we got a relationship, or how much is that relationship. Because we can all buy into a relationship. We can only all buy, you might take $1 worth. You might buy $2 worth. That's fine to start off things going. And some of us might put in $100. And others might put in $2. But I know if we've got good relationships, that's fine too. Because some people can only afford $1. Other people can afford $100. So it's looking through that way to assessing everything that we do. The other one is manaakitanga, and this is one. Manaakitanga is your practice. So all the values that you talk about, wrapped up in manaakitanga. Mana I te tangata. Hey, we all come with mana. We're born with mana. It's not a power tool. It's not a power and control tool. It's a responsibility and an obligation. It's a responsibility and an obligation. That's mana. Mana ki te tangata. And if you're doing the mana thing right, if you're doing the manaaki thing right, if you're doing the awhi thing right, aroha will appear. Aroha, you know what aroha is, eh? Aro ki taha. And some of these was translated as love. Yeah, there's different forms of love. Aroha will go a little bit deeper than that, but we won't go there today. But that's what manaakitanga is. So when I talk to council, do we get into a manaaki frame? Sometimes. Not see them talking. And then when we talk to kāinga ora, you know, manaakitanga, does that happen? TPK, manaakitanga. Absolutely important that we can, if we can stay in that spot. We can get angry with one another. We can get angry with one another, but don't forget, everybody's got their mana. Everybody's got their mana. Pērā kia mata, ta mana wā tātou Ngāti Tororo Tarangitanga. So this is what this was all about, and putting a whole lot of stuff that we done, like we got the Hannah's Bay Reserve. That time was pretty important. The Hannah's Bay, now we got a board on there, 3 EVU members on there. 3 EVU members, and we put them on ourselves. And the other 2 people are from the community, and then 1 from the council. So we got a bit of work to do down there, but that's coming up very shortly. We got a piripo service, again, bringing all different government departments together to work together. Not an easy thing. Not an easy thing when they want their outcomes. So you got mental health in there, or you got health in there. You got MSD in there to a certain degree. We need some more from MSD in there. You got OT in there. Oranga Tamariki in there. And we got other government departments. We still can go a little bit further in there. But these are some of the things that had come up way back then. Way back then. But yeah, the focus was on a tamariki mokopuna. And also kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga. So a lot of people can get that term mixed up too. Kai. To understand the kupu kai. Kai, you know it as food. To go down your tinana, kai is also the skills that you bring. What is the kai you do to koe to move forward this kaupapa? What is the kai that you have? If you've got good kai, then we need to feed it. We need to feed it into whatever we do. Could be in your qualifications. Could be in your qualifications. You might have a master's in something. That's a kai. You might be a doctor. That's a kai. But it's not a kai when you don't practice these things. Manaaki, awhi. Then it doesn't become a kai. It becomes a job. It becomes a job. So those are just some of the things we threw together. and just say, that was, I don't know when we come up with this. When did we come up with this drawing, Christine? One of our girls, one of our ladies came up with this drawing on all the things that we were talking about and put it together. Yeah, Mary Nicholas. So, just understanding that word, kai. We're selling that to a lot of our schools and our kids in the school. What kai have you got? Straight away they'll say fish and chips. But now we're getting to say, what other kai have you got? And then, what's on the next one? Just some of the things that our group could work off. Just some of the ideas. This is what it means. This is what it could be. This is what it could be. So, whakapapa, whanaungatanga, wairua, and tiakitanga, and manakitanga. What's the next one? So, over the last couple of years, I think, we've been working on the wellness plan for the Eastside. Now, this wellness plan, and again, they come with, council came with a structural plan, a spatial plan, and to have a corridor around it. We changed it into a wellness plan. Yep, next one. Next one. Yeah. So these are some of what the wellness is going to be talking about. Housing in your community. Yeah, we still got to get these guys to think, even though we've got it's been approved by council. Takes a lot of time for people to actually work with it, or people to get to understand it. But that's it. We want to interfere in housing in your community. We want to interfere in business and industries. When they come in, we want to talk to them. What does it look like? We want to change what it looks like. If we can come under this wellness plan, that's what we need to make it happen. Luckily, a lot of my whānau are doing businesses out there. That way, my Ngāti Whakaue tribal lands doing a lot of stuff. So we're having a good kōrero around what it could look like. Quality of our environment. You heard about, we're talking about 3 waters. We were already talking about it. We were already talking about 3 waters. So we have, and then the other one was playgrounds and reserves. Playgrounds and reserves. There's councillors that need to be talking to us. They need to be talking to us as a community. They will talk to us as a iwi hapi too. Because there's a couple of ture or rules of engagement in terms of when you sell reserves. There's one from a local reserve and there's also one from central government. Because a lot of those lands were my old Māori land. So they have to talk to us. If you want to sell it, you need to talk to us. To iwi hapu, unless we sold it. And some of it we did sell it. But, you know, in terms of ownership and everything, well, you own it. Rotorua owns it. Not the council, Rotorua owns it. So that's why they need to talk. Working with our different cultures, our different communities. So that's why one of the reasons our tribal groups out there, we're in all the schools. We're in all the schools from the Ngāpuna stream, the Puringa stream, all the way out to Waiohewa. That's out the turn off to go to Tikitere. So yeah, when all those talking, making arrangements. And because of our relationship to make it genuine, sign the dotted line. Sign the dotted line. Still a hard one for ture or for local or central government to understand what that means. And how do you progress that? But that's a work in progress in terms of relationships. That's a work in progress in terms of relationships. And then at the end of it is community safety. That's what got me on board, was the community safety when we first started. Because we had a lot of stuff happening out Eastside in terms of gangs, in terms of graffiti, in terms of, just a little bit of stuff. Our parks, some of our parks, nobody wanted to go to them. Puketawhero was one of them. So that was the first place we concentrated on, was Puketawhero. Now everybody goes there. Safe place to go. Wasn't a safe place to go when we first started, back then. But that's what this wellness plan was all about, getting into our communities. What's on our next one? Yeah. And this is where I'll think. So the vision for us has always been about this, collectively, together, nurturing our future, making it together. This wellness plan was worked with the council, with a couple of staff that worked on the Rosemary, I think, Yeah, they worked on the road. They helped us to put this together, the council. So this is the only place I need to go on this, is here. And what is our objectives? You can have a look at some of our objectives, what it's all about, key moves. If you want to go online, you can go online and have a look. Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff in there that we're actioning. Actually, it's going to take a long time. It's not over a thing. Because even some of our taris, our government departments, are pohara in their thinking too. They are pohara in their thinking. But we've got to change that. And we can't change that by being on attack mode all the time. Or being in battle mode. You've got to be in manaki mode all the time to get to where we're going. I used to be in battle mode a lot, and that was a waste of bloody time. Yeah, till I moved to manaki role. Oh, this is working out a little bit better. This is working out a little bit better. So yeah, key moves, we've got objectives on there, our key moves. Some of our key moves provide a safe and caring community, absolutely. Protecting and enhancing our taiao and our natural environment. At the moment, we've got 10 schools going over to Mokoia. We've got 10 schools going over to Mokoia to do biodiversity stuff. So, those are things. We've got other plans for other things. Well, Waikawa is another one. That's going to be some stuff happening in Waikawa. I know our Ngāti Rangi Taurere whānau are doing wetlands down the end of town. And I know Ngāpuna is working on doing wetlands too, in their end of town. And all these things. Even on our farms now, we're looking at just how much impact cattle are having on the things. So a lot of these farms have come back to us after 100 years. After 100 years of being owned by somebody else. A lot of them have come back to us now. So there's all these farms. If we look at Whakapau Ngākau there, you'll see all these gullies down there. What's the space on it? What's the space on it? In terms of what we're going to be putting in there. But it's all about this. Free waters, all about free waters. Tatau Paru, from getting down to our Rotorua Nui a Kahumatamomo. Stop the Paru from getting into our Tamariki Mokopuna. That is what this plan is all about. Reinforcing a sense of place and character. And that's everybody. And when I use my tribal roots, my tribal thing, I have an obligation. Anybody comes into Ōwhata, ko au te mana whenua, ko au te manaki, pōwhiringia. And I tell some of my counterparts when they first set up Scots Avenue, if you know where Scots Avenue is, down the thing, when that area was first there, all the people that came from there came down home. Came down home to be pōwhiri into Rotorua. That was an old practice that we had as Māoris. Lost it. Hopefully we want to introduce that when we start doing kainga ora homes out our way. Yeah. And hopefully to provide a connected community. Provide a connected community. Not to be fighting each other. We all have differences, but not to be fighting each other. You're just wasting your time when you fight each other. It's a mau wa. I learned that a long time ago. And promoting development in the thing, in our location, but to make sure it goes in the right place. To make sure it goes in the right place. I mean, one of the things that used to upset me was our way back when I used to look at it, when they first did the original dump. Original dump is in a place, they placed it in a place called Te Ariki Ro. Rangatira kupu, rangatira name, and they had the dump there. Then they went and put a bloody toilet in there, and it's still there. That's what we're talking about. If you're going to do something, put it in the right place, and we can help you to do that. Don't assume you can do it. Because we have got more ties in terms of our responsibility to those places. But yeah, that still bugs me. The old toilet still bugs me. The old dump, those things still bug me. But I can get over it. I can get over it. And hopefully we can move forward on that council. What's on the next one? Can we move it up? Oh, we're running out of time, people. But if I can just finish this up, just on that wellness. Yeah, there's kainga ora. All the words we use, all those Māori kupu we use, not being used in the right way. Not being reused. But that's an obligation from us to make sure that it's being used in the right way, eh? So everything you do, wellness. Nō reira kai mihi ati ka koto kia tata katoa, eh? Kia ora tātou.